Welcome in, everybody, to this edition of the Views from the 573 podcast. And we are talking about Super Bowl 59 on this edition of the show, in which we saw the Eagles Chiefs meet up for the second time in 3 years, with the Eagles getting some good old-fashioned revenge here in New Orleans. And here to talk to me about that, this is a guy that we are not going to trade under any circumstances to the Los Angeles Lakers in the dead of night. It is Matt Mormann. Matt, how you doing?
Ryan, I will say I would understand if you did. I am 30, so I'm in that age range where you may want to trade a player, not 25, but like Luka Doncic, there may be some fluctuating weight issues from time to time. So if I have that in common with Luka and you decide to trade me, I would understand.
Well, and listen, I would also try to get more than one first round pick out of the deal.
Let's be honest though, Ryan. If you can trade me and get Anthony Davis to be a podcast partner, you do that trade.
Yeah, but then AD's going to get hurt and might be out for an indefinite amount of time. So
Great, not great.
I gotta feel, just to talk about that a little bit, I gotta feel like that there's gotta be a Mavs fan out there that's thinking like, oh boy, because we did a trade, we are cursed now.
Well, and Ryan, not to immediately derail our Super Bowl podcast by talking about the NBA here. I'm just trying to think of like in two things here. There's two paths that my brain's been going down here recently with this. One path is when's the last time I can think of a trade just immediately, not just like being panned by a right, but also like what 2 games in, 3 games in,
Yeah,
AD is hurt now. Like the Aaron Rodgers trade is probably the only other one I can think of where it's just like immediately the guy gets hurt and is just like gone,
yeah,
right?
that's a fair comp.
Um,
Yeah,
the other thing, and I really have struggled when it first came out, is like, what's a comparable trade that has occurred across sports? The only thing I've been able to come up with was the Manny Ramirez trade back in the 2011 trade deadline. No, 2007 trade deadline, maybe 2008, where Manny Ramirez got traded from the Red Sox to the Dodgers.
right.
Jason Bay, who was like a really good player, got traded from the Pirates to the Red Sox, and the Pirates got prospects that didn't turn out to be anything, because of course not. Um, that's like the only trade I can think of where it's like that level of megastar getting traded, kind of like for another like player. I don't know. It was just such a weird trade. I couldn't really come up, like in mid-season trade. Also, by the way, like that's the other factor in this, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, the Matthew Kachuk trade a little bit in that regard, but like that was an off-season trade. This was mid-season. This is a deadline deal involving two star players. One legit like best player in the league star player, and the other one's like a
yeah,
star. It was wild. It was wild.
yeah. It was. Well, of course, we had to get a Pirates joke in here because
Ah, poor
why
people.
not? Because the Pirates are going to pirate. Um,
Ryan, I'm really just kind of doing my best to avoid talking about this dredger of a Super Bowl. Do you want to talk Royal Rumble? Do you want to talk about what happened in that? Do you want to just talk about some yeet with Jey Uso and how are we eating? I really don't want to talk about this Super Bowl.
funny enough, I have a wrestling meme. I've been meaning to send it.
Oh,
I've been meaning to send it. I think I'll send it here soon, but I've been meaning to send it. It involves Uso, so I have something in the files for that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh
All right,
man,
I guess I'll let's talk about the Super Bowl now.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about this Super Bowl, Matt. I kind of mentioned this pre-show. I think this was out of all the different outcomes that we could have drawn up for this Super Bowl between these two teams. I think this result that we got would be the least drawn up. I don't think anybody would have thought that. Hey, if you said, Mahomes is going to have the type of game he has, fourth quarter aside, and then Barkley is going to have the game that he has, we would assume like, okay, this is going to be a low scoring affair. Both teams couldn't do anything. They couldn't do nothing. The defenses played remarkable, and that was true for one side. But I think you would have thought if those two guys did poorly, it would have been a low scoring game, and we wouldn't have gotten a blowout the way we did.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things where it's like when you get to the Super Bowl and you get to teams of this level, you never expect the blowout, right? Like think
Oh,
back to the Peyton Manning Seattle year, right? That was shocking, like you never thought Peyton Manning was gonna have that game. You never thought that the first Chiefs Super Bowl loss, the Buccaneers, is gonna go the way it did. Never saw this one coming either. I think it was almost like a 1% in the back of my mind just because of the Tampa game having already happened, where it's like, okay, well, Philly's got really good pass rush, like, okay, maybe it can happen, but like it was nowhere near. Like, if you would have told me, like, most likely scenario, Chiefs win in a close game. Second, Philly wins in a close game. Third, Chiefs win by like 10. Third or fourth at that point, Philly wins by like 10. And then like fifth is a Chiefs blowout. And then finally sixth is a Philly blowout. Like that would have been my ranking of outcomes here. And well, that's not, do not let this final score fool anybody in the history books. Like kids,
yeah.
like, tell your grandkids one day, no, this was a blowout. Mahomes pooped the bed. He threw 3 touchdowns. Do not let that fool you. Like this game was complete garbage. It was so bad. Kenny Pickett got to play.
And meanwhile, going back to Pierre Lewis suffering.
Sorry,
Oh man. Oh, that was listen. That moment was funny when in the group chat as we were texting about this game,
Peter.
you get Kenny Pickett coming in and just like Pierre Lewis like I am ill. This man's gonna get a ring before a lot of the current Steelers of the last few years, and here comes Kenny Pickett getting a ring. It's like doing it's like doing nothing on the project, but still getting like an A plus. It's like
Bro,
that,
and not just
almost in a way.
not even getting a ring. Got to be on the field during the game.
Yeah.
Like, I want to say good for Kenny Pickett, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think the other surprising thing about this was just this Chiefs offense. Considering how well they've been playing here the last few games, where they really kind of found something with that quick game with Mahomes and him being so good, and them just getting the ball out here in like 2.5 seconds. In this game, I think that this offense and the lack of explosive plays again, throw out that worthy touchdown aside, it was not there. They had one of the lowest explosive play rates in the league, and they could have used that. I don't know why they didn't go to that worthy bomb earlier, but I mean it was backups.
They
But
didn't have
that
time.
just they didn't have time to. But also just the coverage for this Philly team was so good. Matt, I want to ask you this because in just listening to some stuff in the hours after, it feels like this performance from Philly's kind of leaned towards what we saw. What was it, Seattle do or Denver do to Carolina?
Seattle did to Denver.
Okay, okay,
Is
team
for
swap.
my version
Yeah,
was the blowout, right? Where it's LOB, really the coming out party. And honestly, that was actually, Ryan, you totally sniped me here. That was a comparison I was gonna make, was big picture wise. This Philly run, comparing it to the LOB run, right? But kind of flipped, where it's like all those years ago, Seattle won theirs first, then they lost it to New England a couple years later, right? Or maybe it was 1 year later, actually, maybe it been back to back. But regardless, though, they won and then they lost. But dominant defense, like the game that Seattle won, dominant defense, really good running game, right? Marshawn Lynch as kind of the
right.
head, that right. Um, a young quarterback who I think a lot of us kind of still put Jalen Hurts, for fantasy purposes, he's like QB 3, 4, 5, but for NFL purposes, he's more of like a 8, 9, 10. Like there's probably some guys,
Hmm.
like Joe Burrow, maybe Justin Herbert, who you prefer NFL wise. Um, Russell Wilson, similar boat, right? You never put him up there with a Drew Brees, a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, even a Big Ben during those years, but you would put him at like 8, 9, 10. So I think it's a really interesting kind of in reverse order here. 10 years later, very similar total structure here. Very young defense. Yeah, that pass rush. My goodness, Patrick Mahomes couldn't get away with anything. I think that's why there was none of that deep ball early on. And I actually thought they should have gone to more of the cutesy underneath stuff early. I felt like they were trying to do a lot of like short to intermediate routes, and they weren't getting a chance for those to develop. I thought bubble screens, jet sweeps, get Worthy the ball behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of
Yeah.
scrimmage, let them try to cook. And to their credit, I think they tried that a couple times and they got snuffed out. I would
Yeah.
have kept on going with that, especially that first drive after halftime. To me, that was a drive where, yes, I get it. You were down, gosh, what was it, 24-0? So it feels like you have to score on every play, but you don't. At halftime, coming out of that, you just got to take a deep breath and you just got to put together, even if it's an 8-minute drive, and you do chew up some clock in doing it, you have to get the touchdown. And I felt like they really, I feel like this is kind of almost the difference between Mahomes in these two Super Bowls compared to Brady in all of his. Is I feel like when Brady fell behind, and 28-3 is kind of the go-to example here.
Hmm.
Brady was able to remain patient and kind of remain chip away, give yourselves a chance here. Let's put together this drive. Versus Mahomes in both of these Super Bowls where they lost, I feel like it's been a little bit of panic meter, right? A little bit of I gotta go score 24 points on this play. And he did score 24 points in one play. It felt like when the problem is at that point you needed 40, right? So the touchdown to Xavier Worthy, like that was felt like that was the kind of play he was going for a lot, and we see this a lot of times. I mean, that was the Ravens in the AFC Championship a year ago. A lot of teams have that feeling against the Chiefs. That's one of the Chiefs, big secret ingredient is they force the other team to feel like you have to play perfect, you have to score in every single play. That's not the case. And so the Chiefs have really, kind of had that turned on their own head with both of those Super Bowls. Again, obviously, look, they've won three of them. But in the two losses, though, the two losses are very, very similar. And that's the game that we just saw was one of those.
Yeah. We go back to just like how this pass rush was, and just limiting those deep balls. I think, if you had to say, in talking about who has the most at stake here and who has the most to gain from a win for either side, I think for the Eagle side, you can make a compelling case for Vic Fangio. A guy that was 0-8 against Mahomes as a coach, as a coordinator, just could not figure things out. He gets to this game. He's like, listen, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to blitz them. We're just going to send our four guys, maybe send three, or maybe send some simulated pressures. But we're largely going to send it, largely be 4 to 3 guys, and just play. I believe they played a lot of quarters, a lot of cover four. I think I read it was like 59%. That's an insane number of quarters. But yet, you look at how they played, especially on that Cooper DeJean pick six. A lot of that, if you're watching him, if you're watching Mitchell, a lot of that cover four is like, yes, they're playing zone, but they're sticky. Like they are keeping that all contained, and where you're not able to go and take those deep shots, where it's all kind of like like the defensive line, the secondary kind of constricted things on the back end. And so, I mean, you just take a look at what Fangio did. This was huge for him. Getting a win over Mahomes and just saying, hey, we are going to get after him with four, and it worked.
Yeah, and so I'm just pulling up some stats real quick to look back at another game because I feel like that sounds very similar to what the Bengals did when they beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship all those years ago now. Yeah, they had 4 sacks in that game. And really it kind of changed the blueprint to how you play against Patrick Mahomes. And it became you play quarter defense, you play cover four, you play back, you play the cover two shell, you do not let them beat you over the top. And at some point, Mahomes has been really, really good at staying patient for these last 2, 3 years now. Of take the defense gives you, we'll run the ball, it's fine, we'll get it down to the red zone, and then we'll make our magic and win it from there.
Yeah.
Not patient, and granted, look, I get it. The pass rush is all over you. You feel like the one time you actually get to step up and throw, you got to hit it and you got to score a touchdown. But at the same time, I think that was a bit of the downfall. It's kind of a bit of a spiral from there. Um, and you mentioned the Cooper DeJean pick six, and obviously that was a huge one. I thought the game was over with the other pick, though. The interception out of his own end zone where it put the ball down at the 14 right before halftime. The Chiefs in particular, and this is the Brady-ness of the Chiefs, right? This is that thing. those two teams, those two runs have done so well was that situation. The end of the first half, start of the second half, the double dipping, right?
Yeah.
Countless times. Brady and the Patriots and Mahomes and the Chiefs. This is like their two hallmark situations where they will score 10 points minimum on you. If they have the ball at the end of the first half, the start of the second half, and not only did they not score any of those situations, they said, "Here you go, ball," and Billy go have it the 14 and score on us. And to me, that was curtains.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, both of these, both those interceptions were just like big time backbreakers right there. That really kind of changed like how we view how this game is going to go the rest of the way. Yeah, Matt, I got this stat, and this was from Next Gen Stats, and I was floored when I read it. So Mahomes, he had a negative 1.36 EPA per dropback. And it's like, okay, well, that's just a number. Well,
Really
let me
bad.
point this out. Also included, they said that was the 10th worst since 2018. And among those games include two Davis Mills games, one Will Greer start, one PJ Walker start, and
Oh,
the infamous Sam Darnold I'm seeing ghost game.
yikes!
Yeah.
Bad. That's some really bad company. I thought you were gonna say the poor cat that had to go play football for, I think it was for the Bills, and he just threw interceptions. I don't remember his name now.
Peterman?
Yes, Nathan Peterman. I guess maybe that was so long ago the stat wasn't around yet. That
Maybe, yeah.
My goodness, that is a rough group to be in, and to do that in the Super Bowl, like, not to get too Stephen A. Smithy here, Ryan.
No,
But
no.
I think it's worth mentioning, like, when you mentioned earlier who has the most to gain out of this, and I think totally on the Eagles side of things, this was a once in a career, once in a lifetime opportunity. If you're Vic Fangio, hey man, you've been in this league for 80 years or something. You finally got your one. If you're Jalen Hurts, now you can say that you are added to the quarterbacks who have won a Super Bowl. If you're Saquon Barkley, you get to put this on a Hall of Fame resume. If you're AJ Brown, like, totally. If you're Devonta Smith, you become one of only a few players to ever win a Heisman, national championship, and the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
Absolutely. If you're Patrick Mahomes, and by the way, if you're Andy Reid, I don't think really anything changes legacy wise.
No.
If you're, I almost call him Tony Gonzalez. If you're Taylor Swift's boyfriend, nothing really changes. If you're Isaiah Pacheco, nothing really changes. For Patrick Mahomes, though, I think it kind of is another big knock on him versus Brady. And it kind of really cements to me that his ceiling, this is insane, and this is not meant to be in any way negative, because I know it will be taken like one. His career upside is the second greatest player in the history of the NFL. And I'm sorry that that is a negative to be the second greatest player of all time. But to me, that's where you get put now, because you've lost twice head to head versus Brady. You've lost two ugly Super Bowls. The New York ones that Brady lost, right? One had a helmet catch, which was
Yeah.
followed up by a one-handed Plaxico Burress touchdown catch that no one talks about because of the helmet catch,
Yeah.
right? And then, like, Nick Foles one, the Philly special. It's like there are these iconic plays because the games were so close that Brady lost. I mean, I don't know. I guess the Cooper DeJean pick six is pretty iconic, but the rest of it was just such a compilation of whoopsie daisies that not one play really gets to stand out.
Yeah, there was no really one play that, stood out. Even, just as far as the Eagles offense, we didn't have that big explosive Saquon run in this
The
game.
Devonta Smith.
Yeah. The Devontae Smith touchdown was huge. You could make a point that the back shoulder throw to AJ on McDuffie was pretty huge.
Honestly,
The Dotson
the Devonta
throw,
Johnson, yeah.
yeah, and that goes into some of the Eagles. It's like you look at the additions they made in the off season. All of them in this game really had a big impact on this game. Now you can say, well, hey, Ryan, Saquon didn't, have that big 6 yard plus run. Go back and watch that Dotson, that big Dotson play. Look at how, the Chiefs bring a corner blitz. Jamar Corner is coming from the right side, and Saquon comes across, and he's 230 pounds, goes and pops him. That gives Hurts enough time to go find Dotson, who is, I believe, is a slot fade down the right sideline, and he has Watson on him, and he beats him. That is, even though Saquon has those huge runs, that right there is a winning play right there because it gave Hurts the enough time to go and say, "Hey, I got Dotson right here. He's beat Watson." And you just take a look at him. You take a look at Bond, who had that huge pick right there. That was a huge play right there where Mahomes looks like he is going for Hollywood, and he just has, for a slant, and Bond is underneath. And that's the other thing. The Eagles had so many guys underneath on this quarter's coverage too that again, it's just so constricting. But you had Bond making plays, you had DeJean making plays, Quinyon Mitchell, was sticking around on all these Chiefs receivers all night long, and other guys as well that made huge leaps. Josh Sweat made a huge leap in this game. This guy was wrecking Jawan Taylor on that right side. Like, Jawan Taylor, I'm sure, was glad to be done with them. But you had him, Milton Williams. It goes back to, this whole Eagles type of thing is where, like, they draft these guys and sure, like Cam Jurgens, for example. They draft these guys and they don't play right away, but they draft them for a year or two later down the line, and here they are ready to step in and be able to be players in this big-time game. It's just a testament to what the Eagles this all season has what they did, but also what they've done as an organization here as far as the last couple of years of drafting.
Sorry, Ryan, you may have seen me have a big reaction while you were in the middle of talking there. I just realized I won $150 last night. So yay! big win. On Underdog, they had a free $10 promo where you could do like any like parlay of like up to 4 picks and get your money back if it doesn't hit. So my parlay was a Xavier Worthy touchdown. So hey, it may not have mattered for anybody else, but it matters for me. AJ, your guy AJ with a touchdown.
Oh man.
And then I took the over on Jake Elliott's shortest field goal at 28.5 yards, Ryan. And if you remember, there were 3 different times in which the Eagles took a penalty on their field goal attempt.
Yep.
And on one of them, it went from a 24 to a 29-yard field goal attempt. And then I thought I lost this because my fourth part of my parlay was a Harrison Butker over on his shortest field goal being 28.5. But they ended up calling it a push. And so that leg just got erased. So it went down from like, I think it would have been like a 280 payout down to like a 150 payout. I'm perfectly happy with that result, though. If only Harrison Butker could have just kicked a meaningless field goal of like 38 yards or something, that would have been grand. However, Ryan, so I'm sorry, I wasn't entirely listening because I had just had the realization that I should check my bets, and I won $150 last night. So you know what? Chiefs, you may have lost, but at least someone in Missouri got to be a big winner.
Man.
In all seriousness, though, Ryan, you mentioned a lot about the pass rush there and the Chiefs. And that's bringing me to one thing I wanted to bring up here, too, was every time the Chiefs have lost in the postseason, especially that Tampa Bay loss, we really see them kind of revamp the team immediately, right? They lose in a gunfight to the Bengals. They trade Tyreek Hill, and they kind of change the way the offense runs. They lose to Tampa Bay. They say, hey, our offensive line got wrecked. We need a whole new offensive line, right? Go get Joe Thuney. Go get Creed Humphrey. Go draft, Trey Smith, all these guys. What do you think the offseason, not to totally turn the page already, but like, what do they do? How do you fix this? I guess it's probably just the offensive line again, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if I could take a look at one thing for the Chiefs, I mean, the offensive line, they were doing all right for what they were here down the stretch, but I think it really came to a head just because of the fact, you had William Morris, you had Kingsley Suamataia, your second round pick, you had DJ Humphries, who you signed off in the middle of the season. Those guys didn't work out, and it just came to a head with last night's game where Thuney just kept on getting beat outside. Caliendo, Taylor, they were all getting beat outside. So yeah, I think the offensive line is where you have to go, but and they're already paying so much money for the offensive line, and you're probably going to lose Trey Smith in the offseason, who's going to go hit the open market. So you're just like, okay, we got to figure this stuff out. We got to find a solution at left tackle, and then like once we get that figured out, we can just go say, okay, we got to find a right guard here and plug him in, and you're like, okay, this is R5 because you're not worried about Creed Humphrey, you're not worried about Thuney at left guard. He's amazing there. So yeah, I think offensive line that's gonna be. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I think they go back to what they did a couple years ago and say, hey, we're gonna find the best left tackle we can. We're gonna let him play there, and we're not gonna let what happened to us in this Super Bowl happen to us again.
And look, Andy Reid is a far better coach than I would ever imagine being, even in Madden, right? But I remember we were talking a couple years ago when the Buccaneers Super Bowl happened, and a stat I came across was, I think if I remember right, there were literally 3 plays in the entire game of that Super Bowl where he left an extra blocker in, whether it be a running back or a tight end. It was such a minuscule number, and I'm like, Andy, we all were watching that Super Bowl saying you have to help those guys, right? Poor was it like Austin Ryder or something was just like getting shredded out there. This time I definitely noticed it more that they were leaving guys in from time to time. The thing that I thought as an adjustment that's like, and again, Andy Reid, all the coaches I would never be. The one thing that they finally did one time in like the third quarter is like a bootleg. And I remember seeing a play action Jalen Hurts bootleg too. And I was like, why aren't you doing more of that too? Move the pocket, get him out there. You got to try doing some things here to just like slow down that pass rush. And it's not easy to do, of course, but it was another situation where I do think Andy gets off the hook a little bit because of general greatness. But this is a second time now where I do feel like a little bit of it is he doesn't fully know how to adjust just when the pass rush is the thing that's beating him. Like, how do you find a solution for that? I think he's very good at finding solutions against coverage. I think he has a bit of a struggle of figuring out what to do when the pass rush is the thing that's beating him.
Yeah, and also just to bring up this pass rush again, they did this without zero blitzing all
Yeah.
night long. Zero blitzing. At some point, Matt, I had this stat written down. At some point in midway of the third quarter, the pressure rate was over 50% of
Yeah.
Mahomes' dropbacks. And that is an absolutely insane stat to kind of think of. And I also found this stat. When you have something like that happen, where a quarterback is not blitzed, in Super Bowl history, when there's been 6 quarterbacks now, adding Mahomes, that have not been blitzed in Super Bowls, all have lost.
Wow. That makes sense though, because if you did lose the game, at some point you probably got desperate to make a play, right? So I guess that does make sense. But that's interesting for sure. The other thing too, by the way, only 11 total runs, 4 of which were by Mahomes.
Yeah.
I thought, and at some point you have to just totally abandon the run. I get that. That was just another thing I kind of thought earlier on, like, why are we seeing any Kareem Hunt? Why are we seeing any Isaiah Pacheco in the first like 2, 3 drives over 3 and out, or the one first down and out? So I don't know. I honestly I don't have a whole lot more about the game to give you. It was pretty straightforward as to what happened here, Ryan. It was a butt kicking.
Yeah. I think the other thing, okay, I just got an update that said that 126 million in the U.S. watched the Super Bowl across TV and streaming platforms. So
There you go.
I think we had a little prop bet with the streaming with Nielsen, the viewers and all that stuff. So I made a joke in the group chat because we had the uh, offensive PI early on in the game. I think I told you. I guess I should have had an over under on when the controversial call would
Yes.
go in.
Because you knew there would be one. Like, is there a game in the NFL entire season that happens that doesn't have something controversial?
No, there's always something.
Well,
Um,
no, honestly, though, like in the big picture here, like it was so insignificant, and like every penalty was so insignificant because it was a 30-point game for the most part. I
yeah,
would almost argue there's no controversial call.
yeah. A couple other things to get here. get here before we close up shop, I guess. Hurts absolutely deserve MVP. His only misstep was that interception, I think.
I think they could have gone Josh Sweat if they want to get cute with it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally doing what Jaden Daniels had done against the blitz all season long, is just finding the open space within the passing game and then the running lanes, and like, boom, I got an answer here to go and take off. He was just absolutely outstanding, and he deserved that MVP. You could have made a case for Sweat because he was a monster all night long. And then, just taking a look at other stuff for Philly. I mean, listen, you got Milton Williams, Zach Bond, Josh Sweat. Those guys are hitting free agency. But you take a look at a lot of the base salaries for those guys, it's pretty low. And they got other guys waiting in the wings. This is what they do. They got other guys ready to go and contribute. So I tell you what, for Philly, they should be considered as somebody that's a favorite next year. But man, what a Super Bowl! What a way for Sirianni to get on the board here.
A hot take with 1 minute to go from me, and then I'm going to take the under on the Eagles win total next year.
Mm-hmm.
A little hot take from me. Probably because I just expect a bit of a Saquon dip. Any running back that goes for 2,000 yards has a dip the following year.
Yeah.
So hot take in the final 60 seconds.
Yeah, that's fair. It's hard to come back from, over 2,000 yards rushing in a single season. But yeah, everybody, this was fun. Another NFL season in the books. But we'll be back as always talking about NFL offseason stuff, and there's already a lot of stuff picking up as far as that's going. So till then, everybody, have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys soon.